My sister called me on a Thursday evening, her voice dripping with that sugary sweetness she always used when she wanted something. But this time, she wasn't asking. She was gloating. "I'm getting married tomorrow, Emmy. Isn't that exciting? Oh, and I drained your bank account, all $92,000. Consider it my wedding gift from you. Thanks so much. Bye." The line went dead before I could respond. I stood in my kitchen, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the silence where my sister's voice had been. $92,000. 5 years of careful saving. Every bonus, every tax refund, every dollar I didn't spend on vacations or new clothes or anything beyond the essentials. Gone. Just like that. And do you know what I did? I laughed. Not a bitter laugh, not a hysterical one. A genuine, surprised laugh that echoed off my kitchen walls. Because Linda had just made the biggest mistake of her life. She thought she was so clever. She thought I would crumble, cry, maybe beg her to return the money. She thought I would do what I always did, absorb the blow and move on. But Linda didn't know something crucial. She didn't know that her entire $45,000 dream wedding, every vendor, every flower, every canapé was about to collapse, and I was the only person who could stop it. I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story until the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. My name is Emily Carter, and at 35 years old, I thought I understood my family. I was a senior financial analyst at an investment firm in Charlotte, North Carolina, the kind of woman who checked her bank statements every Sunday morning and kept a spreadsheet tracking her savings goals. I lived alone in a modest apartment uptown, drove a sensible car, and had exactly one expensive habit: good coffee. Everything else went into savings. Everything else went toward my dream of buying my first home. A small craftsman in the Dilworth neighborhood had caught my eye 6 months ago. 3 bedrooms, a front porch, a backyard big enough for a garden. The asking price was $320,000, and I had finally saved enough for a proper down payment. $92,047 to be exact. I knew that number by heart. Now I stared at my banking app, watching the screen confirm what Linda had announced so casually. Savings account balance, $47.23. 3 separate withdrawals over the past week. $30,000, $35,000, $27,000. All routed to an account belonging to Linda M. Carter. I set my phone down carefully, like it might explode if I moved too fast. My hands weren't shaking. That surprised me. I thought they should be shaking. But instead, I felt something cold and clear settle over me. The same focus I got when analyzing a complex financial report. Assess, analyze, act. That was my training. That was what I knew how to do. The how of it came back to me in fragments. 3 years ago, Linda had called me sobbing. "Lily's in the hospital, Emmy. High fever, they're running tests. I'm terrified. I can't access my bank account, some security freeze. Can you add me as an authorized user on yours? Just temporarily, just until I can pay the hospital bills." I hadn't hesitated. Lily was my niece, 7 years old at the time, and I would have walked through fire for that child. I logged into my bank that same night and added Linda as an authorized user on my savings account. The emergency access was supposed to be temporary. The emergency itself turned out to be a low-grade fever treated with children's Tylenol. Lily was released the same afternoon. And Linda never removed herself from my account. I never thought to check. I never thought to remove her access myself. Because she was my sister. Because family trusted family. Because I was, as Linda had once texted to a friend, an easy target. I'd seen that text message 6 months ago accidentally, when I borrowed Linda's phone to take a photo of Lily at her birthday party. A notification had popped up from someone named Megan. "So did you get the money from her yet?" And like a fool, I'd scrolled up. My sister is such an easy target. She always feels guilty about being more successful. She thinks being the good sister means being a doormat. I'd put the phone down, taken the photo, gone home, and quietly removed Linda from my checking account. But my savings account, The one with $92,000, I'd forgotten. One account, one oversight. That's all it took. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "Your sister is so happy about the wedding. Don't you dare ruin this for her, Emily. She deserves happiness after everything she's been through." I stared at the message. No hello. No how are you. No acknowledgement that I existed as anything other than a supporting character in Linda's life story. Just a command to stay in my lane, to not cause trouble, to be the good sister, the responsible one, the one who always understood. But here was the thing Mom didn't know. Here was the thing Linda didn't know. 6 months ago, when Linda got engaged to Jason Miller, she came to me with a request. She wanted a dream wedding. Magnolia Gardens venue, premium catering, live band, the works. Total budget, $45,000. The problem was, Linda had no money. Maxed credit cards, no savings, a job she quit every 6 months. So she asked if I would be her financial guarantor for the vendor contracts. "Please, Emmy, I'll pay you back from wedding gifts. Jason's family is wealthy. I just need someone to sign the contracts so the vendors will work with me. You know how these things are." Against my better judgment, I agreed. Every vendor contract, the venue, the caterer, the florist, the photographer, the DJ, all of them were in my name as guarantor. All deposits and payments flowed through an account I controlled. Linda had put my name on everything, told the vendors I was her silent investor, her generous sister making up for years of being absent. She built her entire wedding on my signature, and now she had stolen my savings, thinking she'd taken everything from me. But she'd actually given me the kill switch. I did the math. $92,000 stolen from me. $45,000 wedding dependent on my authorization. Without my approval, not a single vendor would proceed. The venue wouldn't open its doors. The caterer wouldn't deliver the food. The florist wouldn't arrange a single rose. I picked up my phone. Not to call Linda, not to beg or plead or ask why. I opened my contacts and found the number for First National Bank's fraud department. It was 8:47 p.m. on a Thursday night. The wedding was scheduled for Saturday at 4 p.m. That gave me approximately 40 hours. The automated system put me on hold, then transferred me, then put me on hold again. Finally, a human voice. "First National Bank Fraud Department, how can I help you?" My voice came out calm, controlled, almost pleasant. "I need to report unauthorized transactions on my account, and I need to freeze all linked accounts immediately. Every single one." I looked at the photo on my desk while I waited for confirmation. Linda and me, arms around each other, ages 8 and 11, both smiling, both innocent, both believing we'd always be on the same side. I set the photo face down. "I'm sorry, Linda, but you did this to yourself." The hold music played softly through my phone speaker while I waited for the bank's fraud department to process my request. I sat at my kitchen table, laptop open, coffee growing cold beside me. The apartment felt different now, charged with something I couldn't quite name. Outside my window, Charlotte's skyline glittered against the night sky, ordinary people living ordinary lives. None of them knew that my world had just tilted on its axis. I found myself wondering, not for the first time, how we got here. When did my sister become someone who could do this? When did I become someone who let her? To understand that, you have to understand the Carter family. You have to understand how we were built. My father, Richard Carter, was an insurance adjuster who believed that peace at any price was better than conflict at any cost. He spent his career assessing damage and calculating settlements, and he brought that same energy home. Avoid the argument. Smooth things over. Write the check if it makes the problem go away. My mother, Diane Carter, had been a beauty queen in her youth, first runner-up for Miss North Carolina 1978. She never quite got over not winning, and she poured all her unfulfilled ambitions into her firstborn daughter. Linda was beautiful from the moment she arrived, dark hair and green eyes and a smile that made strangers stop on the street. I came along 3 years later, quieter, plainer, more interested in books than beauty pageants. From the beginning, we occupied different roles in the family story. Linda was the star, I was the stage crew. The hierarchy established itself early and never shifted. Linda's bedroom was the large one at the front of the house, pink walls and princess canopy and a closet full of clothes. Mine was the converted study at the back, practical and small. Mom called it cozy. Linda's birthday parties were elaborate productions with themes and catered food and professional photographers. Mine were family only, cake from the grocery store. Be grateful for what you have. When I asked about the difference once, Dad put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Emily, you're so mature. You understand we have to make choices. Linda needs more. You've always been the strong one." I was 10 years old when I learned what being the strong one really meant. Linda wanted dance lessons, the expensive kind, competition level with costumes and travel and coaches. I wanted piano lessons from Mrs. Patterson down the street, $20 a week. The family budget could only accommodate one. Dad sat me down with that same hand on my shoulder, that same apologetic smile. "Emily, you understand, don't you? Linda has such talent. This could be her future. You're so responsible. You'll find other ways to express yourself." I nodded. I always nodded. Linda got her dance lessons. I got nothing. And I learned that being responsible meant being overlooked. The summer I was 16, I overheard a conversation that crystallized everything. Mom was on the phone with Aunt Patricia in the kitchen, and I was in the hallway, frozen, unable to move. "Emily's fine," Mom said, her voice carrying that dismissive tone I knew so well. "She's the strong one. Linda needs more support. She's sensitive." I stood there in that hallway, understanding for the first time that strong didn't mean admired. It meant she can handle being neglected. It meant we don't have to worry about her. It meant invisible. Linda's trajectory through life followed a predictable pattern. She was homecoming queen in high school, dated the quarterback, got written up in the local paper for her charity work, which consisted of one afternoon at a soup kitchen with a professional photographer present. I was on the honor roll, captain of the debate team, working part-time at a bookstore to save for college. At my graduation, Mom spent the entire dinner talking about Linda's new boyfriend. When Linda was 19, she crashed her car driving drunk after a party. No one was hurt, thankfully, but the car was totaled. Dad bought her a new one within a month. She learned her lesson, he said. At 16, I was still taking the bus to my job at the bookstore. When Linda dropped out of college after 2 semesters because it just wasn't for her, my parents nodded sympathetically and welcomed her back home. When I earned a full scholarship to UNC Charlotte and graduated with honors in finance, Mom asked if I could help Linda with her credit card bills. Linda's first marriage happened when she was 28. His name was Marcus Webb, a good man with a steady job in IT and a gentle disposition. He adored her. They met at a party, got engaged in 4 months, married in 8. I was the maid of honor, and when the wedding budget ran $15,000 over, I covered the difference. It's family, I told myself. That's what family does. The marriage lasted 3 years. By the end, Marcus looked like a man who had been hollowed out from the inside. Linda quit her job 6 months after the wedding to focus on being a wife, which meant shopping and spa days and what she called retail therapy. Marcus's credit cards maxed out one by one. When their daughter Lily was born, I hoped motherhood might ground my sister. Instead, Linda hired a nanny and resumed her spending. Marcus filed for divorce after discovering $40,000 in credit card debt Linda had hidden from him. But Linda was faster. She spun a story about financial abuse, about a controlling husband who hid money and monitored her every purchase. The family believed her. They always believed her. I paid for Linda's divorce lawyer. I paid for her apartment deposit after she moved out. I paid for Lily's clothes and school supplies when Linda said she was struggling. The total over 2 years came to roughly $25,000. She's my sister, I told myself. She's Lily's mother. What choice do I have? The fake emergency happened 3 years before this night. Linda called me sobbing, saying Lily was in the hospital with a high fever. She couldn't access her bank accounts due to some security freeze. She needed temporary access to mine to pay hospital bills. I didn't hesitate. Within an hour, Linda was an authorized user on my savings account. The emergency turned out to be a low-grade fever. Lily was home by dinner, and Linda never removed her access. I trusted her. She was my sister. What I discovered later, in small amounts I almost didn't notice, was that Linda had been making withdrawals. 200 here, 400 there. Always just under the threshold that would trigger an alert. Over 3 years, the total came to roughly $3,500. I noticed. I said nothing. Because calling out family felt worse than losing money. Because I didn't want to seem petty. Because I was still, after everything, the strong one. 6 months ago, I saw the text messages on Linda's phone. Easy target, doormat, useful. I removed her from my checking account that night. But the savings account, the one with $92,000, I forgot. One oversight, one moment of incomplete action. That's all it took for my sister to steal my future. The hold music stopped. Ms. Carter? Thank you for waiting. I straightened in my chair. Yes, I'm here. We've frozen the savings account as requested. The linked vendor payment account has also been frozen pending investigation. Relief should have flooded through me. Instead, I felt only a cold readiness. All automatic payments scheduled for the next 72 hours have been suspended. Then the representative said something that made my blood run cold. Ms. Carter, there's something else you should know. When we reviewed the transaction pattern for the fraud report, we noticed something unusual. The first withdrawal from your account was made exactly 1 week ago, the same day your sister was added to a joint account with a Jason Miller. It appears she gained access to his accounts on the same day she accessed yours. I sat very still. She didn't just steal from me, she's stealing from her fiancé too. And nobody knew. Nobody but me. I didn't sleep that night. By the time Friday morning arrived, I had been awake for nearly 24 hours, running on coffee and something sharper than caffeine. Determination, maybe, or fury finally given permission to exist. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, notes scattered across every available surface, the bank's fraud confirmation email glowing on my screen. Outside my window, Charlotte woke up like any other Friday morning. People heading to work, grabbing coffee, living their ordinary lives. For them, nothing had changed. For me, everything had. The clock on my laptop read 6:47 a.m. The wedding was scheduled for tomorrow at 4 p.m. That gave me approximately 32 hours to decide what kind of person I wanted to be. The sister who forgives and forgets, who absorbs the blow and moves on, who keeps the peace at any cost? Or the woman who finally, after 35 years, fights back? I picked up my phone and dialed Rachel Chen. Rachel and I had been friends since college, roommates freshman year, and we'd stayed close ever since. She was a corporate attorney now at a prestigious Charlotte firm, the kind of woman who wore power suits like armor and could dismantle an argument with surgical precision. She was also the only person in my life who had never liked Linda. She's a user, Rachel had told me once years ago. I don't know how you can't see it. I hadn't wanted to see it then. I saw it now. The phone rang twice before a groggy voice answered. Emmy? It's 7 a.m. on my day off. Someone better be dead. I almost laughed. Not dead, but I might commit murder if you don't help me. There was a pause. Then Rachel's voice sharpened into full alertness. I'm listening. I told her everything. Linda's phone call, the stolen $92,000, the frozen accounts, the wedding that depended entirely on my authorization, and the revelation from the bank that Linda had accessed Jason's accounts on the same day she accessed mine. When I finished, silence stretched across the line for a long moment. She did what? Rachel's voice came out flat with disbelief. And there's more, I said. I think she's also stealing from her fiancé. The silence lasted another 3 seconds. Then Rachel said, I'm coming over. Don't do anything until I get there. And for the love of God, make more coffee. Rachel arrived at 8:30, looking put together despite the early hour. She carried her laptop bag and a legal pad, her eyes already scanning my scattered notes before she'd even sat down. Okay, she said, setting up at my kitchen table like it was a war room. Walk me through everything, from the beginning. Don't leave anything out. So I did. Every document, every transaction record, every detail I'd assembled through the sleepless night. Rachel listened without interrupting, taking notes in her precise handwriting, her expression growing grimmer with each revelation. When I finished, she set down her pen and looked at me. Authorized user doesn't mean authorized to drain the account, she said. She had access. She didn't have permission to take $92,000. That's theft. Grand theft, actually, given the amount. You have grounds for criminal charges. Fraud, too, if she misrepresented herself to access those funds. And what about the wedding? I asked. The vendors? Rachel pulled my vendor contracts toward her, scanning each one with practiced efficiency. You signed as guarantor on all of these. You're not just the payer, you're the contractual party. Her eyes met mine. Without your authorization, these vendors can't proceed. Legally, you can halt every single payment. The words settled over me like armor. I had suspected as much, but hearing it from an attorney made it real. Linda had built her dream wedding on my signature, and I could tear it down with a phone call. Rachel, I said slowly, if I freeze everything, the wedding collapses. My family will blame me. Rachel's expression softened slightly. They'll blame you anyway. They always do. Then let's make sure you're protected when they do. We spent the next hour building a strategy. Step 1, confirm all vendor contracts were solely in my name. Step 2, issue formal stop payment orders to each vendor. Step 3, document everything for potential legal action. Step 4, decide whether to contact Jason. That last part was the hardest. He's about to marry a woman who's stealing from him, Rachel said. Doesn't he deserve to know? I hesitated. I've never even met him. Maybe he already knows. Maybe he's part of it. Rachel shook her head. Or maybe he's another victim, just like you. I thought about Marcus, Linda's first husband, the man she'd painted as financially abusive when the truth was the opposite. He hadn't known either, not until it was too late. By then, his credit was destroyed, his reputation shattered, his custody of Lily reduced to weekends. If someone had warned him, maybe things would have been different. I'll freeze the wedding, I decided. If Jason reaches out, I'll tell him the truth, but I'm not going to hunt him down. I have enough to deal with right now. Rachel nodded. Fair enough, for now. The vendor calls began at 9 a.m. Magnolia Gardens, the wedding venue, answered on the second ring. Good morning, this is Patricia speaking. How can I help you? I took a breath. This is Emily Carter. I'm the guarantor on the Carter-Miller wedding scheduled for tomorrow. I need to verify the payment status and discuss the contract terms. Patricia's voice warmed immediately. Oh yes, Ms. Carter. Your sister speaks so highly of you. She's talked about how generous you've been. My stomach tightened. Has she? What exactly has she said? Well, Patricia continued cheerfully, she calls you her silent investor. She said you insisted on funding the wedding as a gift because you felt guilty about something. Not being supportive enough during her divorce, I think she said. I closed my eyes, letting the full weight of Linda's deception wash over me. She hadn't just stolen my money. She'd constructed an entire narrative to justify it. In her story, I was the guilty one, the absent sister trying to make amends. She'd made me complicit in my own robbery. That's not accurate, I said, keeping my voice steady. I need to issue a stop payment on the remaining balance. Please don't proceed with any setup until you hear from me directly. There was a pause. Ms. Carter, the wedding is tomorrow. I'm aware. The pattern repeated with each call. Belmont Catering had a $15,000 contract, with $7,000 still due. Your sister said you volunteered to pay because you couldn't attend the wedding yourself, the manager told me. She said you were too busy with work but wanted to contribute. I had said no such thing. I issued the stop payment. Flourish Florals, $4,500 total. Your sister was so grateful, the florist said. She told me you two had finally reconciled after years of being estranged. We had never been estranged. We had never reconciled because there had been nothing to reconcile from, at least nothing Linda would ever admit to. I froze the remaining $2,500. By noon, I had contacted every vendor: DJ, photographer, hair and makeup, transportation. Each one had a different story, a different version of why Emily Carter was so generously funding her sister's wedding. In one version, I was making up for missing Linda's first wedding. In another, I was the wealthy finance sister who wanted to treat Linda like a princess. In yet another, I was the family's unofficial wedding planner who had insisted on handling all the details. Not a single story was true, but they all painted the same picture. Linda had built a fantasy world where she was the beloved bride and I was the supporting character, so eager to please that I would pay any price for her approval. She had weaponized my reputation for responsibility against me. Rachel compiled the notes from each call. "She didn't just steal your money," Rachel said quietly. "She stole your reputation. She made you the villain in a story where you're actually the victim." I stared at the list of vendors, the total amounts, the elaborate web of lies my sister had spun. "She's been doing this our whole lives," I said, making herself the heroine of every story. Rachel's jaw tightened. Not anymore. By 4 p.m., every vendor had been notified. Magnolia Gardens would not open its doors. Belmont Catering would not deliver food. Flourish Florals would not arrange a single rose. The DJ would not play music. The photographer would not take pictures. 150 guests would arrive tomorrow to find nothing. Linda's $45,000 dream wedding was now frozen solid, and she had no idea. Rachel ordered takeout and forced me to eat. "You did the right thing," she said. I chewed without tasting. "Then why do I feel like I just detonated a bomb?" "Because you did," Rachel replied. "But it was a bomb she built. You just lit the fuse." My phone had been silent all day. No calls from Linda, no texts from my parents. Linda probably thought I was somewhere crying, paralyzed by her betrayal, too weak to fight back. She was about to learn otherwise. At 8:47 p.m., my phone finally rang. Linda flashed across the screen. Rachel and I both stared at it. "She knows," Rachel said. I picked up the phone but didn't speak. I just waited. And then I heard my sister's voice, no longer sugary sweet, no longer triumphant, shaking, high-pitched, panicked. "What did you do?" I said nothing. Her voice rose to a scream. "What did you do?" "The venue called, the caterer called, they all called. They said the payments are frozen." "They said you froze them." I let the silence stretch for one more moment. Then I spoke, my voice calm, controlled, almost pleasant. "You stole $92,000 from me, Linda. Did you really think there wouldn't be consequences?" The line went silent. When Linda spoke again, her voice had changed. Not panicked anymore. Cold. Dangerous. "You have no idea what you've just started." I woke on Saturday morning to sunlight streaming through my apartment windows. For one brief, disoriented moment, I forgot what day it was. Then reality crashed back, and I remembered everything. It was my sister's wedding day. The wedding that no longer existed. Rachel was asleep in the armchair across from me, her laptop still balanced on her knees. We had both passed out sometime after midnight, too exhausted to make it to actual beds. I reached for my phone on the coffee table and felt my stomach clench. 14 missed calls from Linda, 6 from Mom, 3 from numbers I didn't recognize, a cascade of text messages, each one more frantic than the last. Linda at 2:47 a.m., call me back now. Linda at 3:15 a.m., I swear to God, Emily, if you don't fix this. Linda at 5:02 a.m., you're making the biggest mistake of your life. Mom at 6:30 a.m., what have you done? Call me immediately. I scrolled through them all, reading but not responding. Then I set the phone down, walked to my kitchen and made coffee. The morning was beautiful. Perfect wedding weather, actually. Clear blue sky, gentle October warmth, the kind of day that photographers dream about. Somewhere across town, 150 people were probably putting on their best clothes, checking their hair in mirrors, looking forward to champagne and cake. They had no idea what they were walking into. I imagined the scene unfolding at Magnolia Gardens. The venue should have been bustling with setup crews by now. Florists arranging centerpieces, caterers preparing appetizers, the DJ testing sound equipment. Instead, the gates would be locked, the parking lot empty, the beautiful gardens silent. Linda would arrive in her car, wedding dress hanging in its garment bag, expecting to step into her fairy tale. She would find nothing but a coordinator with an apologetic face and devastating news. My phone buzzed. A text from a Charlotte number I didn't recognize. "Ms. Carter, this is Patricia from Magnolia Gardens. The bride has arrived and is extremely distressed. She insists there's been a mistake. Please advise." I typed back, "There's no mistake. The stop payment stands. Please direct all inquiries to my attorney." I included Rachel's contact information, then silenced my phone. I had said what needed to be said. Now I would wait. Rachel stirred awake around 10, blinking against the morning light. She saw my face and immediately straightened. "What happened?" "Nothing yet," I said. "But it's about to." By 3:30 in the afternoon, my phone had become a chronicle of disaster. The texts came from friends of friends, from distant relatives, from people I barely knew who had somehow gotten my number. "Did you hear about Linda's wedding? Everything's canceled. The venue is locked. There's no food. People are just standing in the parking lot in their fancy clothes with nowhere to go." One text included a photo, grainy and distant, showing a crowd of confused guests clustered near the Magnolia Gardens entrance. And there, at the center of it all, a flash of white. Linda, still in her street clothes, gesturing wildly at someone I couldn't make out. Then came the text that stopped me cold. Jason, Linda's fiancé, the man I had never met. His message was brief and bewildered. "Is this Emily Carter? I'm Jason Miller, Linda's fiancé. Or I was, as of this morning. I need to understand what's happening. Linda says you sabotaged the wedding out of jealousy. But something doesn't add up. The vendors keep saying you were paying for everything, that you were the guarantor on all the contracts. But Linda told me she was paying from her savings. She told me she had $40,000 saved." I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I typed back, "Linda has no savings. She has $28,000 in credit card debt. And she stole $92,000 from my bank account this week to pay for this wedding. I'm sorry you're finding out this way." The response came quickly. "I think I need to hear the full story." Before I could reply, my phone rang. Not Jason. Mom. I let it ring 3 times, bracing myself, then answered. "How could you do this to your sister?" Mom's voice was sharp enough to draw blood. "On her wedding day, Emily. Her wedding day." I kept my voice even. "Did Linda tell you what she did? Did she tell you she stole $92,000 from me?" Mom didn't pause. "That's between you two. You didn't have to ruin her wedding over money." "Over money?" I repeated, my composure cracking for the first time. "She stole my life savings, everything I had." "That's not a family disagreement. That's a crime." "Family doesn't press charges against family," Mom snapped. "You fix this, Emily. Whatever it takes. You fix it right now." I thought about all the times I had fixed things. All the times I had written checks, absorbed costs, smoothed over problems, kept the peace. I thought about being 10 years old and giving up piano lessons so Linda could dance. I thought about being 16 and still taking the bus while Linda drove her second new car. I thought about paying for a wedding that wasn't mine, paying for a divorce that wasn't mine, paying and paying and paying while everyone told me I was the strong one, the one who could handle it, the one who understood. "I'm not fixing anything," I said. "Linda created this mess. She can deal with the consequences. Then you're no daughter of mine." The line went dead. I set the phone down carefully. My hands were shaking, but not with grief, with something that felt almost like freedom. Rachel watched me from across the room. Your mom? I nodded. I think I just became an orphan. My phone buzzed again. This time, an unknown area code. A text message from a number I didn't recognize. Is this Emily, Linda's sister? This is Marcus, her ex-husband. I heard what happened. News travels. I wanted to say thank you, and to warn you. I stared at the screen. Marcus. The man Linda had destroyed with accusations and lies. The man who had lost his reputation, his credit, and half his custody of Lily because he dared to question where their money was going. His next message appeared. She did the same thing to me. Exactly the same. Drained the accounts, blamed me for everything, made me look like the villain. I lost my reputation, my credit, my relationship with my daughter. No one believed me. Her family certainly didn't. Another message. She's going to try everything now. Tears, threats, family pressure. She'll make you feel like the monster. Don't fall for it. You're not the monster. She is. I was still processing Marcus's words when the pounding started. Not a knock. An assault on my front door, violent enough to shake the frame. Rachel jumped up. Don't open it. But I was already moving to the peephole, some part of me knowing what I would see. And there she was. Linda, still in her wedding dress, though it was wrinkled now, stained with parking lot dust and mascara tears. Her hair was half done, falling in loose strands around her face. Her eyes were wild with something beyond anger, something unhinged. I opened the door. For a long moment we just stared at each other. Two sisters, separated by 35 years of dysfunction, and a threshold neither of us wanted to cross. Then Linda's voice came out raw, ragged, barely human. You ruined my life. The words echoed down the apartment hallway. I could see neighbors' doors cracking open, curious faces peering out at the spectacle. My sister in her destroyed wedding dress, screaming at me like I was the one who had betrayed her. I stood perfectly still, looked at this stranger in white, this woman who shared my blood but had never shared my values. And I spoke quietly, calmly, with a steadiness I hadn't known I possessed. No, Linda, you ruined your own life. I just stopped paying for it. Her face twisted with rage. She stepped forward, and for the first time in my life, I didn't step back. Linda stood in my doorway, wedding dress stained and wrinkled, mascara carved in dark rivers down her cheeks. Behind me I could hear Rachel shifting, her phone already out and recording. Smart woman, we might need evidence of whatever happened next. Do you have any idea what you've done? Linda's voice cracked between screaming and sobbing. 150 people. They all saw. They all know. Jason's family flew in from Seattle. His grandmother is 83 years old. Everyone was staring at me like I was some kind of criminal. I stood my ground in the doorway, blocking entry into my apartment. You need to lower your voice. You're disturbing my neighbors. But my calmness only seemed to infuriate her more. Linda's hands clenched at her sides, her breath coming in ragged gasps. For a moment I thought she might actually try to hit me. Then something shifted in her face. I watched it happen in real time, the rage flickering, recalculating. She was used to getting her way with anger. When that didn't work, she had other tools. Her shoulders crumpled, her face transformed from fury to grief. The tears, which had been angry, became something else. Theatrical, wounded. How could you do this to me, Emmy? She used my childhood nickname, the one she hadn't called me in years. Her voice dropped to something softer, more vulnerable. I'm your sister, your only sister. I know I'm not perfect. I know I've made mistakes. But I was finally going to be happy, finally going to have a real family, and you took that from me, on my wedding day. She reached for my hand and I stepped back. Don't you remember how close we used to be? Sharing a room when we were little, telling each other secrets? What happened to us? I almost laughed. What happened to us was 35 years of you taking and me giving. But I didn't say that. I just watched her perform, recognizing every beat of the script she'd been running since childhood. The tears, the memories. the appeal to blood. She had used these same tactics on our parents, on Marcus, on every person who had ever tried to hold her accountable, and it had always worked. Until now. The performance shifted again when she sensed I wasn't melting. Linda straightened, wiped her eyes with an exaggerated gesture, and tried a different angle. "After everything I've done for you," she said, her voice taking on a righteous edge. "Who was there when Mom and Dad favored you for everything? Who defended you when kids at school called you boring? Who included you in my friend group when you had no one? I made you who you are, Emily. And this is how you repay me?" The lies were so bold, so completely divorced from reality that I almost admired the audacity. Mom and Dad favored me? I was the one taking the bus while Linda drove new cars. I was the one with the small bedroom, the grocery store birthday cakes, the scholarship I had to earn because there was no money left for my education. But in Linda's version of history, she was always the victim, always the one who had sacrificed. "It's not like you were going to use that money anytime soon anyway." The words slipped out before she could stop them. I froze. "Excuse me?" Linda's eyes flickered, realizing her mistake, but she doubled down. "I just meant you don't have a wedding to plan. No house, no family of your own. That money was just sitting there, and I needed it. I needed it more than you did." Rachel's voice came from behind me, cold and precise. "Did you get that?" She held up her phone. "Recording." Linda's face went pale. Behind her, the elevator dinged, and I heard footsteps approaching. Familiar footsteps. My stomach dropped even before I saw them. Mom and Dad marching down the hallway like reinforcements arriving at a battlefield. They must have driven straight from wherever they'd been when Linda called. Dad looked tired, uncomfortable, his natural state. Mom looked ready for war. "Haven't you done enough?" Mom's voice cut through the hallway. She went straight to Linda, wrapping an arm around her, shooting me a venomous glare. "Look at her! Look what you've reduced her to!" I stepped back to let them into the apartment. Not because I wanted them there, but because my neighbors were still watching from their cracked doors. Whatever happened next didn't need an audience beyond the people already involved. They arranged themselves in my living room like a tribunal. Linda collapsed dramatically on my couch. Mom sat beside her, stroking her hair like she was a wounded child. Dad hovered by the window, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. Rachel positioned herself near the front door, phone still recording, watching everything with the sharp attention of a lawyer building a case. "I raised you better than this, Emily." Mom's voice was cold. "Family is everything. Everything. Whatever Linda did, you handle it privately. You don't humiliate her publicly. Do you understand what people are saying about us? About our family?" I looked at my mother, this woman who had spent 40 years molding me into the family's shock absorber, and I felt something harden inside me. Linda stole $92,000 from me. That's not a misunderstanding, that's grand theft. Dad made a small sound, somewhere between a cough and a word. Everyone looked at him. He stood by the window, shoulders hunched, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. "Just let it go, Emily," he mumbled. "I'll pay you back somehow." Mom's head snapped toward him. "Richard!" But Dad kept talking, his voice barely audible. "She's right, Diane." Linda took the money. I saw the bank alerts on Emily's account. I set them up for her years ago, and they still go to my email too. I knew when the withdrawals happened. The silence that followed was absolute. "You knew?" Mom's voice had changed, the fury redirecting toward her husband. "You knew and you didn't tell me?" Dad shrank further into himself. She begged me not to say anything, said she'd pay it back after the wedding, said it would all work out. I stared at my father, understanding finally that his silence wasn't just cowardice, it was complicity. He had watched Linda steal from me and said nothing. He had received those alerts, seen the money disappearing from my account, and chosen to protect his golden child over his responsible one, just like he always had. Mom turned back to me, but something in her expression had shifted. She was still angry, but now the anger was mixed with something else. Confusion, maybe. the first crack in the fortress she'd built around Linda's behavior. Linda's phone rang, cutting through the tension. She answered, "Put it on speaker." A small voice came through, scared and confused. "Mommy? When are you coming home? Why did the party stop? Did I do something wrong?" "Lily?" My heart clenched at the sound of her voice. Linda's eyes met mine, and I saw the calculation there even through her tears. "No, sweetheart," Linda cooed. "Mommy's just talking to Auntie Emmy. She made a mistake, but Mommy's going to fix it." Then, with deliberate cruelty, "Tell Auntie Emmy you love her, baby." Lily's innocent voice. "I love you, Auntie Emmy. Please don't be mad at Mommy." Linda hung up, her gaze locked on mine. "She adores you. She wants you at her birthday next month. Are you really going to take her mother away? Over money? What kind of aunt does that make you?" Rachel stepped forward, her voice ice cold. "That's enough. Using your daughter to emotionally blackmail your sister. That's a new low, even for you." Linda's head snapped toward her. "Stay out of this. This is family business." Rachel didn't flinch. "I'm Emily's family. The kind that doesn't steal from her." I walked to my front door and opened it. "Everyone out." Mom started to protest. "Now." I turned to Linda. "You have 72 hours. Return every dollar you stole, all 92,000, and sign a legal document acknowledging what you did. Do that, and this stays private. No police, no courts. Refuse, and I file criminal charges Monday morning." Mom's voice was barely a whisper. "You would send your own sister to prison?" I looked at Linda. "She would send herself to prison. I'm just the one pressing the button." They filed out slowly, Mom supporting Linda like a wounded soldier, Dad trailing behind, unable to meet my eyes. But at the door, Linda paused, turned. Her face had changed again. Not tearful anymore, not raging, something colder, something calculating. She leaned close, whispered so only I could hear. "You think you've won? You think freezing my wedding was the end of this? I know things about you, Emily, things that could end your career. 72 hours? Fine. Use them to remember who you're really dealing with." She walked away, wedding dress dragging on the concrete. I closed the door and leaned against it, suddenly exhausted. Rachel was watching me carefully. What did she say? I closed my eyes. She threatened to destroy my career. Rachel frowned. "With what? You've done nothing wrong." My stomach clenched. There was something, 3 years ago at work. A calculation error that almost cost us a major client. I caught it, fixed it, disclosed it to my supervisor. No harm was done. But Linda was the only person I ever told about it, and now she was going to use it against me. Every secret I had ever shared with my sister, every vulnerability, every confession, all of it was ammunition now. Sunday morning arrived with gray skies and the promise of rain. I sat at my kitchen table, laptop open, coffee untouched, watching the clock count down the hours of Linda's ultimatum. 64 hours remaining. 64 hours until I either received my money back or filed criminal charges against my own sister. I already knew which outcome was more likely. Linda's whispered threat echoed in my mind. Things that could end your career. The Morrison account situation had been 3 years ago. A calculation error in a client projection that I caught before it caused any damage. I had disclosed it immediately to my supervisor, who had praised my integrity. It should have been a non-issue. But Linda had a talent for twisting non-issues into weapons. If I was going to fight, I needed to understand the full scope of who I was fighting. What else had Linda done? Who else had she hurt? How deep did this pattern go? My phone rang at 9:15. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but the area code was local. I answered cautiously. "Emily, it's Marcus Webb, Linda's ex. We texted yesterday, but I need to tell you more. I need to tell you everything." I set down my coffee. I'm listening. His voice was steady but heavy with years of accumulated pain. "We met at a friend's party when Linda was 28. She was charming, beautiful, the most attentive woman I'd ever met. She made me feel like I was the only person in the room. We were engaged in 4 months, married in 8. I thought I'd found my soulmate. He paused. The first sign was small. A joint account withdrawal I didn't authorize. $2,000 gone. When I asked about it, she cried and said she'd meant to tell me. Her car needed repairs. She'd been embarrassed to ask. I believed her. I loved her. Another withdrawal followed. Then another. Over 2 years, Marcus explained, nearly $40,000 vanished from their accounts. Every time he questioned a charge, Linda had an explanation ready. Emergencies with Lily, medical bills, a friend in need, and every time she cried, apologized, promised it wouldn't happen again, until it did. When I finally put my foot down and demanded we see a financial counselor, she changed tactics, Marcus continued. Suddenly, I wasn't the concerned husband anymore. I was the controlling one, the financially abusive one. She started telling friends that I monitored her spending, that I gave her an allowance like a child, that she was scared of my temper. I closed my eyes, recognizing the pattern. The same playbook she was using now. When I filed for divorce after finding $40,000 in hidden credit card debt, she was ready, Marcus said. She had prepared the narrative for months. Her lawyer painted me as a monster. Controlling, secretive, probably violent. They had character witnesses, friends she'd been feeding stories to for years. And I had bank statements. Do you know what the judge saw? A frightened woman and a man making accusations. She had tears. I had spreadsheets. Tears won. His voice cracked slightly. I lost primary custody of Lily, my own daughter. The judge awarded Linda majority custody because she seemed like the sympathetic parent, the one who needed protection. I've spent 3 years rebuilding my reputation, my credit, my life. And I still only see my daughter on weekends. She took everything from me, Emily, everything, because I asked where our money went. I thanked Marcus and promised to stay in touch. Then I called Rachel, who connected me with the attorney she'd mentioned. Daniel Reeves specialized in financial fraud cases, and he could see me at noon. Daniel's office was in uptown Charlotte, a sleek space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He was a silver-haired man in his 50s with sharp eyes and a reputation for not losing. Rachel had called in a favor, and he'd cleared his Sunday afternoon for an emergency consultation. I spread my evidence across his conference table. Bank statements, transaction records, vendor contracts, the recording of Linda's confrontation at my apartment. Daniel reviewed each document methodically, taking notes in precise handwriting. When he finally looked up, his expression was grave. "This is a clear case of grand theft," he said. "Unauthorized access to your account doesn't equal authorization to withdraw. The forged documents, assuming she claimed you gave permission for the vendor guarantees, that's fraud." Combined with the evidence of premeditation, his investigator Kevin had already pulled preliminary findings. "Your sister is looking at felony charges." Kevin passed a folder to Daniel, who scanned its contents. "We traced the access logs on your savings account. Your sister attempted to access it 5 times over the past 2 months. 4 failed attempts before the successful one. She was testing your security, looking for the right moment." He looked at me. This wasn't impulse. This was hunting. The money trail was equally damning. Daniel's team had tracked where my $92,000 had gone. $35,000 to wedding vendors before the freeze. $28,000 to pay off Linda's credit card debt. $15,000 transferred to a joint account with Jason, and $14,000 withdrawn as cash. "She used your money to give herself a clean slate," Daniel explained. "Erase the debt, fund the new marriage, and keep a cash reserve in case things went wrong. She was building a new life with your savings as the foundation." I met Jason Miller at a coffee shop in South End that afternoon. He looked nothing like I'd imagined. Tired, rumpled, with dark circles under his eyes that suggested he hadn't slept since the wedding collapsed. We sat in a quiet corner, 2 strangers bonded by the same predator. "I checked my accounts after we talked yesterday," he said, staring at his untouched coffee. "You were right. Small withdrawals over the past month. 200 here, 300 there, always just under the alert threshold. Total was almost $4,000. I never noticed. He looked up at me with exhausted eyes. She told me she had $40,000 in savings for the wedding. She told me you were estranged, that you'd been cruel to her during her divorce. She said her ex-husband was abusive, that she'd escaped with nothing. Every single thing was a lie. I showed him the evidence. Bank statements, vendor contracts, the pattern documented in stark numbers. His face went through stages of pale to red to pale again as he absorbed the scope of deception. "There's something else," Jason said slowly. "Something that's been bothering me. The vendors told me you were paying for the wedding, that you were the guarantor on everything. But Linda told me you offered to do it. She said it was an apology for being absent during her hard times. She said you felt guilty for having a better career and wanted to make it up to her. She made it sound like your idea, like you insisted." I shook my head. "I never offered. She put my name on those contracts without my permission. I was the guarantor because she needed someone with credit to sign, and she knew I wouldn't check the fine print." Jason put his head in his hands. "Who is this woman?" He looked up then, something else troubling his expression. "There's one more thing I need to ask you. Linda told me there was an inheritance coming. $200,000 from your grandmother. She said it would arrive after the wedding, that you'd both receive it. She said that's why money was tight now. Everything was tied up in probate. She used that inheritance to convince me to co-sign on our condo down payment. I put $30,000 against that promise." I stared at him, the audacity of it taking my breath away. "Our grandmother died 15 years ago. She left us nothing because she had nothing to leave. There is no inheritance. There never was." The color drained from Jason's face. "I'm legally responsible for a $30,000 debt based on a complete fabrication." That evening, I connected Marcus, Jason, and Daniel on a conference call, 3 victims of the same woman, finally comparing notes. Marcus had divorce records and custody documents. Jason had bank statements and text messages about the fake inheritance. I had the theft evidence and vendor fraud documentation. Together it painted a picture of serial financial abuse spanning years and multiple victims. Daniel's assessment was blunt. This isn't just one case. This is a pattern of criminal behavior. The DA will love this. Multiple victims with documentation, clear intent. And now, with her social media activity, she's building her own prison. I frowned. What social media activity? Daniel passed me his phone. Jason had forwarded a screenshot from Linda's Facebook page, posted just 2 hours ago. A photo of my sister, tearful but composed, with a caption that made my blood run cold. "Some people will do anything to destroy your happiness. My own sister stole my wedding, my fiancé, and my future, but I won't be silenced. The truth will come out. Hashtag family betrayal. Hashtag sister from hell. Hashtag justice for Linda." The comments were already flooding in, hundreds of people rallying to her side. "Stay strong, Queen. Blood isn't always family. What a monster your sister must be." Linda wasn't waiting for my deadline. She was going public first. She was painting herself as the victim before anyone could learn the truth. The war had just gone public, and I was already cast as the villain. Tuesday morning arrived with the weight of finality. 72 hours had passed. The deadline I gave Linda had come and gone without a single dollar returned, without a phone call, without any acknowledgement that she had done anything wrong. Instead, her social media campaign had gained momentum overnight. Her hashtag Justice for Linda was trending locally. Hundreds of strangers were calling me a monster based on nothing but my sister's carefully crafted lies. I sat in Daniel Reeves's office at 8 a.m., signing the formal complaint. Criminal charges for grand theft, fraud, and unauthorized account access. A civil suit for full restitution plus damages. The documents felt heavy in my hands, heavier than paper should feel. I was about to set in motion something that could send my own sister to prison. "She's not going to pay," Daniel said, watching me sign. "She's betting you'll back down. Her social media stunt proves she thinks this is a PR battle, not a legal one." He took the signed documents and placed them in a folder for his paralegal. "She's wrong. By 10:30, the papers were filed at the Mecklenburg County Courthouse. Criminal complaint submitted. Civil suit initiated. Linda would be served within 24 hours. The family matter was now a matter of public record. Standing outside the courthouse, I felt the weight of what I had just done. Rachel stood beside me, her presence steady and reassuring. "You did the right thing," she said. I watched people stream past us, ordinary citizens going about their ordinary business, none of them knowing that my life had just crossed a point of no return. Then why do I feel like I just amputated my own arm? "Because you did," Rachel replied. "But it was gangrenous. It was killing you." Daniel had advised me to stay away from my parents' house and let the legal process work, but I had other plans. If my family was going to take sides, I wanted them to see the full picture first. They deserved to know who they were defending. I arrived at my childhood home in Matthews just after 4 p.m. The modest ranch house with its manicured lawn and American flag by the door looked exactly as it always had. But everything felt different now. There were 3 cars in the driveway: Mom's SUV, Dad's truck, and Linda's sedan. And one more, a BMW I recognized from photographs. Jason's car. Everyone was already assembled, waiting for something. Maybe waiting for me. I grabbed my folder of evidence and walked to the door. Rachel had offered to come, but I asked her to wait in the car. This was family business, the ugly kind that needed to happen behind closed doors. I didn't knock. It was still technically my childhood home. I just opened the door and walked in. The living room looked like a war council in progress. Mom sat on the couch, arms crossed, face tight with barely contained fury. Dad occupied his usual recliner, looking like he wanted to disappear into the cushions. Linda was positioned in the armchair like a wounded queen receiving sympathizers. And Jason stood by the window, separate from everyone else, his expression unreadable. In the corner, Lily sat coloring quietly, oblivious to the tension crackling through the air. Silence fell when I entered. Every eye turned to me. Mom spoke first. "I hope you're here to apologize." I set my folder on the coffee table. "I'm here to tell the truth. What you do with it is your choice." Before anyone could interrupt, I opened the folder and spread its contents across the coffee table. Bank statements, transaction records, vendor contracts. I walked them through everything, my voice steady and factual. Linda stole $92,000 from my savings account. 3 separate withdrawals over 1 week, planned and executed. I pointed to the vendor contracts. She told every wedding vendor that I volunteered to pay, called me her silent investor, claimed I was making up for not being supportive during her divorce. She forged my name on these guarantor documents. Linda exploded from her chair. "You never loved me." Her voice cracked with fury. "You were always jealous of me. Always. Mom and Dad paid for everything for you. College, your car, your apartment deposit." I let out a short, bitter laugh. "They paid for my state school. You got private school. You got dance lessons. You got every birthday party I never had, and I paid them back, Linda. Every dollar. Did you?" The silence that followed was deafening. Linda's mouth worked, but no words came out. Mom looked at Dad. Dad looked at the floor. I pulled out Marcus's documentation. This isn't the first time. I spread the papers showing the divorce records, the custody battle, the pattern of financial abuse. She did the same thing to her first husband, $40,000. Then she accused him of being financially abusive when he confronted her. He lost his reputation. He lost custody of Lily, all because he asked where their money went. Dad stood up suddenly, his face red. "Stop. Just stop." Everyone froze. My father never raised his voice. In 40 years, I had never heard him yell, but he was yelling now. "Linda, I can't do this anymore. I can't keep covering for you." Linda's face went white. "Daddy, what are you talking about?" 3 years ago, Dad said, his voice shaking. "The business investment you needed. $50,000 from my retirement account. I gave it to you because you said you'd lose everything. You said you'd be homeless. You said I'd never see Lily again if I didn't help. You never paid back a dime." Mom's transformation was instantaneous. The anger in her face redirected like a heat-seeking missile. "Richard, what are you saying? You took $50,000 from our retirement without telling me?" Dad shrank under her gaze. "She begged me, Diane. Said she'd be homeless. Said I'd never see Lily again." He looked old suddenly, broken. "That money was for our future." "I know. I didn't know how to tell you." Mom turned to Linda, and for the first time in my life, I saw something shift in her eyes. The automatic defense, the reflexive protection of her golden child, wavered. She was finally seeing what I had seen for years. Jason stepped away from the window. His voice was flat, drained of emotion. "Linda, I'm done." Linda spun toward him. "Jason, baby, don't listen to them. I've seen the evidence," Jason said. "All of it. The fake inheritance, the forged documents, the money you stole from my accounts." He shook his head. "There is no wedding. There never will be. I'm canceling the condo purchase. My lawyer is handling the paperwork. You'll be hearing from him about the $30,000 you cost me." Linda's composure shattered completely. "You can't do this. We're supposed to be married. We're supposed to start a life together." Jason walked toward the door. "I was supposed to marry a woman who loved me, not a con artist." He paused beside me on his way out. "I'm sorry I believed her lies about you. Whatever you need for the court case, I'll testify." Then he was gone, and the door closed behind him with a sound like finality. Through all of this, through the shouting and accusations and crumbling alliances, a small voice cut through. "Mommy?" Everyone froze. Lily stood in the doorway, her coloring book forgotten, tears streaming down her face. "Mommy, why is everyone fighting? Did I do something wrong? Is it because of the wedding? I'm sorry the wedding got ruined. Please don't fight anymore." I knelt down to her level, my heart breaking. "Sweetheart, this isn't your fault. None of this. Grown-ups are just figuring things out. You didn't do anything wrong. Do you understand me? Nothing." Linda watched me comfort her daughter, and something flickered across her face. Shame, maybe. Or recognition of what she'd become. It was gone as quickly as it appeared. "Fine," Linda said, standing straight, wiping her tears. Her voice had turned cold. "You all want to believe I'm the villain? Fine, but I'm not going down alone." She turned to me, her eyes hard. "You'll regret this. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of person you really are. Your precious career, your perfect reputation. I know about the Morrison account, Emily. I know what you almost did. And I have emails to prove it." She grabbed Lily's hand. "We're leaving," Lily protested, but Linda's grip was iron. "Now!" The door slammed behind them. Linda's threat hung in the air like poison gas. The Morrison account. My one vulnerability. The mistake I had confided in her during a moment of weakness, trusting my sister with my fears. And now she claimed to have emails. Forged? Fabricated? It didn't matter. In the wrong hands, perception beats truth every time. The war had just gone nuclear. I woke on Wednesday morning to the sound of my phone buzzing relentlessly on the nightstand. Notifications flooded the screen faster than I could read them. Facebook tags, Instagram mentions, text messages from numbers I didn't recognize. Rachel was already awake in my living room, her face grim in the blue glow of her laptop. "You need to see this," she said. Linda's public Facebook post had been shared over 800 times overnight. The photo showed her looking broken and beautiful, tear-stained and holding a wilted bouquet, the perfect image of a wronged woman. The caption was a masterpiece of manipulation. "My own sister destroyed my wedding, stole my fiancé, and is now trying to send me to prison. All because I asked for help during my darkest time. Some people can't stand to see others happy. I refuse to be silenced. Hashtag sister from hell. Hashtag family betrayal. Hashtag justice for Linda." The comments section had become a support rally. Hundreds of strangers expressing outrage on Linda's behalf. "Stay strong, Queen. Blood isn't always family. I'm so sorry you have such a toxic sister." The narrative had been set, and I was already the villain. Linda's story grew more elaborate with each subsequent post. According to her version, I had always been jealous of her beauty and success. I had promised to fund her wedding and then withdrawn support at the last second out of spite. I had turned Jason against her with lies. I was now using legal threats to silence a domestic abuse survivor. Each claim was more outrageous than the last, and each one was believed by people who had never met either of us. The most insidious post was a vague reference to my professional life. Some people in finance shouldn't be trusted with other people's money. Just saying. #ask her about Morrison. No details, just enough to plant seeds of suspicion. Enough to make my colleagues wonder what secrets I might be hiding. The personal attacks started arriving around 9 a.m. Text messages from acquaintances who had seen Linda's posts. "Is it true you sabotaged her wedding?" "I thought you were close." Phone calls from concerned friends asking what was happening, and messages from strangers who had somehow found my contact information. "You're a horrible person. Karma will get you. I hope you end up alone." I scrolled through the comments on Linda's main post, looking for familiar names, trying to gauge how far the damage had spread. Then I saw a name that stopped me cold. Sandra Whitmore. We had been friends in college. She had struggled to find work after graduation, and 2 years ago, I had given her a glowing reference that helped her land a position at a marketing firm. She owed me nothing, but I had thought we were friends. Her comment read, "I always knew Emily was cold. She's calculating and fake." This doesn't surprise me at all. A woman I had helped, a woman I had believed in and vouched for professionally, was now publicly declaring me a monster. The betrayal from a stranger I could dismiss. The betrayal from Sandra cut deeper than Linda's posts ever could. My work phone rang at 11. Michael Torres, my supervisor. "Emily, I'm getting some concerning messages about you. Someone sent an anonymous email to HR about financial misconduct. The Morrison account situation." "I don't believe it, but I need to ask. Is there anything I should know?" I explained everything. The calculation error 3 years ago, my immediate disclosure, the clean audit that followed, the acknowledgement letter from my supervisor at the time. Michael listened without interrupting. "Okay," he said finally. "I believe you. I'll handle HR. But keep me posted. This could get messy." Rachel had been monitoring Linda's social media throughout the morning. "Don't respond," she advised. "Don't engage. Let her dig her own grave. Everything she posts is evidence of harassment and defamation. Daniel can use all of this." But watching Linda poison the well, watching strangers believe lies about me, watching my reputation crumble in real time was harder than I had anticipated. "She's trying to destroy me before I can destroy her," I said. "Then we work faster," Rachel replied. Jason called in the early afternoon, his voice tight with controlled fury. "We have a problem. Linda's telling everyone I was in on it, that I helped you sabotage the wedding to steal her money. She's saying we were having an affair, that we planned this together. My business partners are asking questions. Clients are canceling meetings. The new narrative was even more damaging than the original. Linda had transformed Jason and me into co-conspirators, secret lovers who had orchestrated her humiliation for our own gain. Neither claim had any basis in reality. But reality mattered less than repetition, and Linda was repeating her lies to anyone who would listen. Jason's consulting firm ran on reputation. Client trust was everything. 2 clients had already canceled contracts. More were asking uncomfortable questions. "She's destroying my livelihood because I wouldn't marry her," he said. "I'm filing a defamation suit. My lawyer says we can combine our cases, show a pattern of malicious behavior." "Do it," I said. "The more evidence, the better." That afternoon, an email arrived from an unexpected source. The sender was Victoria Reyes. The subject line read, "I worked with Linda. You need to know what she did." Victoria had worked with Linda at a marketing firm 4 years ago. They had been friends, or so Victoria thought. "I trusted her," she wrote. "She had access to my desk, my purse, my passwords. Over 3 months, $3,000 disappeared from my checking account. When Victoria confronted Linda, the familiar pattern emerged. Tears, apologies, promises to pay back every cent. Linda claimed desperation, a difficult divorce, a child to feed. Victoria, compassionate and exhausted, agreed to a private settlement. No police, just a signed repayment agreement. She never paid $1, Victoria wrote, not one. When I threatened legal action, she accused me of harassment. Said I was targeting her because she was a single mother. I dropped it. I was too exhausted to fight. I just wanted it over. Victoria had the settlement agreement, bank statements, text messages where Linda admitted to borrowing the money. "I've been following your case," she wrote. "I saw her posts. She did the same thing to me. Exactly the same. I can testify. I have documentation. I've been waiting years for someone to stop her." Daniel Reeves reviewed Victoria's evidence that evening. 4 victims now, he said, spreading the documentation across his conference table. You, Marcus, Jason, and Victoria, each one with documentation, each one with the same pattern. He looked at me with something approaching satisfaction. This isn't just theft anymore. This is serial financial abuse. The pattern was devastatingly clear when laid out on paper. Step 1, gain trust through emotional connection. Step 2, obtain access to finances through shared accounts, authorized user status, or simple proximity. Step 3, extract money gradually or all at once. Step 4, when caught, cry, blame, and threaten. Step 5, rewrite history to become the victim, and then repeat with the next target. The DA will love this, Daniel said. Multiple victims, documented pattern, clear intent. Combined with her social media harassment, she's building her own prison. Every post, every lie, every accusation, it's all evidence. Just before 6 p.m., Daniel's phone rang. He spoke briefly, then turned to me. That was opposing counsel. Patricia Hawkins, representing your sister. She wants to discuss a resolution. Linda's offer was predictable. She would repay $50,000, not the full amount, on a payment plan over 5 years. In exchange, I would drop all charges and sign a non-disclosure agreement. I would never be allowed to discuss the case publicly. No deal, I said without hesitation. She stole $92,000. She's offering $50, spread over 5 years. And she wants me to sign a gag order after spending a week publicly slandering me? Absolutely not. This goes to court. That night, after Daniel had gone home and Rachel had finally fallen asleep, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I almost ignored it. But something made me look. The message contained a photo attachment, a screenshot of an email supposedly sent from me to my supervisor 3 years ago. The subject line read, Morrison account discrepancy. But the body text had been altered. Words added, context changed. It made me look like I had tried to cover up a major error rather than disclose it. Below the screenshot was a message. Drop the charges, or this goes to your entire company. And the local news. You have 48 hours. It was signed with a single letter. L. I stared at the screen. The email was fake. I knew it was fake. But whoever received it wouldn't know that immediately. And in the time it took to prove it was forged, my career could be destroyed. Rachel appeared in the doorway. What is it? I showed her the phone. She's not negotiating anymore. She's trying for mutually assured destruction. The Mecklenburg County Courthouse rose against a gray Monday sky, its stone facade imposing and final. I arrived at 8:15 with Daniel Reeves and Rachel walking past media vans that had gathered outside. The case had attracted local attention. Sister Steele's Sister's Savings made for compelling headlines. Cameras clicked as we climbed the courthouse steps, and I kept my eyes forward, my face neutral, my heart pounding against my ribs. Daniel had met with Linda's attorney at 7 that morning to discuss the promised guilty plea. Now he turned to me in the corridor outside the courtroom, his expression grim. She's not pleading guilty. She changed her mind this morning. We're going to trial. She claims she has new evidence that exonerates her. I wasn't surprised. Disappointed, but not surprised. Linda always had another angle. What kind of evidence? Daniel shook his head. Her attorney wouldn't say. But it doesn't matter. The evidence we have is overwhelming. Whatever she's planning, it won't work. Then let's finish this. Courtroom 4B was smaller than I expected. Wood-paneled walls, high ceilings, the American flag behind the judge's bench. The gallery was already filling with observers, reporters with notebooks, curious strangers drawn by the headlines, and faces I recognized. Rachel took a seat in the front row behind the prosecution table. Jason Miller sat nearby, ready to testify. Marcus Webb was there too, finally getting his day of validation after 3 years of being called a liar. Victoria Reyes clutched her purse nervously but held her ground, and in the back, separated by an invisible wall of tension, sat my parents. Together physically, but the fracture between them was visible even from across the room. Linda sat at the defense table with her attorney, Patricia Hawkins. I hadn't seen my sister since she stormed out of our parents' house with Lily in tow. She looked diminished. Thinner, paler, the confident golden child replaced by someone I barely recognized. But she was dressed carefully in a soft pink blouse with modest jewelry, the image of a wronged woman. Performance mode. One last show. All rise. The bailiff's voice cut through the murmur of the gallery. The Honorable Judge Patricia Lawson presiding. Judge Lawson entered with the weight of authority in every step. Mid-60s, silver-streaked hair, reading glasses perched on her nose. She had a reputation for no-nonsense rulings and zero tolerance for courtroom theatrics. She took her seat and surveyed the room with sharp eyes that missed nothing. The prosecution may make its opening statement. Daniel rose and approached the bench. Your Honor, this case is about systematic theft, fraud, and betrayal. The defendant, Linda Carter, stole $92,000 from her own sister. She forged documents, manipulated vendors, and when caught, she attempted blackmail with fabricated evidence. This wasn't a desperate act born of momentary weakness. It was a calculated crime executed over weeks. The evidence will show a pattern of financial predation spanning years and multiple victims. We ask the court to hold the defendant fully accountable. Patricia Hawkins delivered the defense's opening with practiced smoothness. Your Honor, my client is not a criminal. She's a victim of family dysfunction. Emily Carter has controlled her family's finances for years. She promised to fund her sister's wedding, then withdrew that support to punish her for perceived slights. What my client did was desperate, yes, but it was born of betrayal, not greed. The prosecution will present numbers and documents. We will present context and humanity. My client made mistakes, but she is not the monster they're painting. I listened to the defense's version of reality and felt the familiar weight of being rewritten. In Linda's world, I was the controlling one, the punishing one, the villain. It was the same story she had told about Marcus, about everyone who had ever tried to hold her accountable. The prosecution called its first witness. Thomas Reed, a senior fraud investigator from First National Bank, took the stand with a folder of documentation. He walked the court through the transaction records. 3 withdrawals over 1 week, $30,000, $35,000, $27,000. All unauthorized. All traced directly to an account in Linda's name. We also reviewed the access logs, Reed continued. The defendant attempted to access Ms. Emily Carter's savings account 5 times over the 2 months preceding the successful breach. 4 failed attempts before the final successful one. This was not impulsive behavior. This was systematic testing of security measures. Patricia Hawkins approached for cross-examination. Wasn't Linda Carter listed as an authorized user on this account? Reed nodded. She was listed for emergency access with verbal restrictions communicated at the time of authorization. She was not authorized to drain the account. Hawkins pressed. But she had access? Reed's response was calm and devastating. Access is not authorization. I have access to the bank vault. That doesn't mean I can take what's inside. The second witness was Dr. Sarah Chen, a handwriting expert. She presented analysis of the guarantor signatures on the wedding vendor contracts. The signatures attributed to Emily Carter are inconsistent with her verified samples, Dr. Chen explained, pointing to enlarged images on a screen. Stroke patterns, pressure points, letter formations, all indicate forgery. She turned to another exhibit. Additionally, the email submitted by the defense as evidence of Ms. Emily Carter's alleged misconduct shows clear digital manipulation. Metadata timestamps don't match company records. Formatting is inconsistent with the employer's email system. This document was fabricated. I watched Linda's face as the forged email, her blackmail weapon, was exposed as another crime. Her composure flickered for just a moment before she smoothed it back into wounded innocence. Marcus Webb took the stand next. He had waited 3 years for this moment. 3 years of being dismissed as a bitter ex-husband making accusations. His voice was steady despite the emotion visible in his eyes. "I was married to Linda for 3 years," he said. "During that time, she withdrew over $40,000 without my knowledge. When I discovered it and asked questions, she accused me of being financially abusive. I lost my reputation. I lost my credit. I lost primary custody of my daughter." He looked directly at Linda. "All because I asked where our money went." Daniel guided him through the details. "How did the court view your claims about the missing money?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "They didn't believe me." Linda cried on the stand. "Said I was controlling, that she was afraid of me." The judge saw a frightened woman and a man making accusations. "I had bank statements. She had tears. Tears won." Victoria Reyes followed, her hands trembling but her voice clear. She described working with Linda, trusting her, then discovering $3,000 missing from her checking account. "When I confronted her, she cried and promised to pay me back. She signed a settlement agreement, never honored it. When I pressed, she accused me of harassment. I dropped it. I was too exhausted to fight. 4 victims. Same method, same manipulation, same outcome." Judge Lawson's expression had grown increasingly grave as the pattern emerged. Linda took the stand for her own defense. Patricia Hawkins guided her through a carefully rehearsed narrative. "Emily was always the successful one, the favorite. I struggled my whole life while she had everything handed to her. When I got engaged, I asked for help. She promised to support me. Then she withdrew everything at the last second to punish me." The tears came on cue. "I'm not a thief. I'm a single mother who made desperate choices. I was going to pay her back after the wedding. She didn't give me a chance. She went straight to the police. My own sister, my blood." Daniel approached for cross-examination, and I watched my sister prepare for the performance of her life. "Ms. Carter, you testified you were going to pay your sister back. With what money? You have $28,000 in credit card debt." Linda hesitated. "I would have figured it out. You also told your fiancé you had $40,000 in savings. Was that true?" "That was a misunderstanding." "And the $200,000 inheritance from your grandmother that you used to convince him to co-sign a loan?" Linda's face paled. "I don't know what you're talking about. Your grandmother died 15 years ago and left nothing. You fabricated an inheritance to manipulate your fiancé," Patricia Hawkins objected. Judge Lawson overruled. "The witness will answer." Something cracked in Linda's composure. "I was just trying to build a life. Everyone else gets help. Why not me? Emily had everything. A career, savings, a future. I had nothing. I deserved that money." The courtroom went silent. Linda realized too late what she had said. Not borrowed, not needed, deserved. Entitlement laid bare for everyone to see. Daniel pressed one final time. "Ms. Carter, our records show you searched how to access someone's bank account without them knowing 2 weeks before the first withdrawal." He displayed the search history on the courtroom screen. "Does that sound like desperation or premeditation?" Linda stared at the screen. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. No tears now, no performance. Just a woman watching her last lie crumble to dust. The witness may step down. Judge Lawson's voice was neutral, but her eyes were not. Court will recess for deliberation. We'll reconvene tomorrow for verdict. As Linda walked past me, our eyes met. Her expression held no hatred, no anger, just recognition. She knew it was over. She had always known someone might stop her someday. She just never believed anyone actually would. Tuesday morning arrived with the weight of everything that had led to this moment. I sat in the same courtroom, the same wooden bench, but the energy had shifted overnight. The gallery was fuller than before. Word had spread. Reporters filled the back rows, notebooks ready. Community members who had followed the case online came to witness its conclusion. The sister versus sister trial had become something larger than a family dispute. It had become a story people needed to see resolved. I had barely slept. Every possible outcome had played through my mind on an endless loop. What if the judge showed leniency? What if Linda somehow walked away from this? What if everything I had sacrificed, every relationship I had damaged, every bridge I had burned was for nothing? Rachel sat beside me, her hand on my arm. "Whatever happens," she said quietly, "you did the right thing." I wanted to believe her. Linda sat at the defense table, motionless, staring at nothing. There was no performance today, no carefully chosen outfit designed to project wounded innocence, just emptiness. She looked like someone who had already received a verdict she couldn't escape. "All rise." The bailiff's voice echoed through the chamber. Judge Patricia Lawson entered with the same commanding presence as before, a folder in her hands. Her face revealed nothing. "Please be seated. I'm prepared to deliver my ruling." The room held its breath. This court has reviewed all evidence, testimony, and documentation presented in this case. Judge Lawson's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. The defendant, Linda Marie Carter, faces charges of grand theft, fraud, forgery, and unauthorized account access. Additionally, evidence of attempted extortion has been entered into the record. She paused, looking directly at Linda. The evidence is overwhelming and unambiguous. The defendant systematically stole $92,000 from her sister through unauthorized withdrawals. She forged documents to defraud vendors. She fabricated an inheritance to manipulate her fiancé into co-signing a loan. And when confronted with the consequences of her actions, she attempted to blackmail the victim with forged evidence. This was not a desperate act born of momentary weakness. This was a pattern of predatory behavior spanning years and affecting multiple victims. Another pause. The courtroom was silent enough to hear breathing. On the count of grand theft, the court finds the defendant guilty. On the count of fraud, guilty. On the count of forgery, guilty. On the count of unauthorized account access, guilty. On the count of attempted extortion, guilty. Each word landed like a hammer blow. I watched Linda flinch with each guilty, 5 times in total. Her shoulders crumpled, her head dropped forward, hair falling to hide her face. A sound escaped her, something raw and broken, nothing like the theatrical sobbing she had deployed so many times before. This was the sound of someone watching their world end. Patricia Hawkins rose immediately. "Your Honor, we request leniency consideration. My client is a single mother with a young daughter who depends on her. She has no prior criminal record. This is her first offense. We ask the court to consider probation and community service in lieu of incarceration." Judge Lawson removed her reading glasses and looked at Linda with an expression that held no sympathy. "Ms. Carter, please stand." Linda rose on trembling legs. "Your attorney mentions this is your first offense. That is technically true." The judge's voice sharpened. "However, the evidence shows this is merely the first time you've been held accountable for your actions. You have victimized at least 4 people that we know of. The pattern suggests there are likely more. You have shown no genuine remorse throughout these proceedings, only regret at being caught. Your daughter deserves better than the example you have set." Linda's composure shattered completely. Tears streamed down her face, but these were different from the tears she had used as weapons. These were real. Given the severity and pattern of these offenses, The judge continued, "I am imposing the following sentence: 3 years probation with strict conditions. Full restitution to Emily Carter in the amount of $92,000. Additional restitution to Jason Miller, Marcus Webb, and Victoria Reyes as determined by civil proceedings. 500 hours of community service to be completed within 18 months. Mandatory financial literacy and ethics counseling. Any violation of probation will result in immediate incarceration for up to 5 years." She leaned forward slightly. "Furthermore, the defendant will carry a felony conviction on her record. This will affect her employment, housing, and professional opportunities for the rest of her life. These are the natural consequences of the choices she made. Ms. Carter, if you appear in my courtroom again for any reason, I will not be lenient. You have been given a chance to rebuild your life honestly. I suggest you take it seriously." Linda nodded, the motion barely perceptible. Tears continued to fall silently. There were no words. What words could there possibly be? Court is adjourned. The gavel fell with a sound of finality that echoed through the chamber. It was over. I sat perfectly still as the reality settled into my bones. Daniel put a hand on my shoulder. "You did it," he said. But I didn't feel triumph. I felt exhaustion. Years of fighting, years of being dismissed and overlooked and treated as a resource rather than a person, had finally been acknowledged, validated. The legal system had looked at the evidence and declared what I had always known. I was not the villain of this story. Rachel wiped tears from her face and wrapped me in a hug from behind. In the gallery, Marcus Webb stood, his own face streaming with tears. 3 years of being called a liar, 3 years of being painted as an abuser, finally vindicated. Victoria Reyes nodded to herself, clutching her purse, finding closure for a wound she had carried in silence. Jason Miller slipped out quietly, his own healing just beginning. I looked toward the back of the courtroom where my parents sat frozen. Mom was crying openly, but I understood now that her tears weren't for Linda. They were for the family that had shattered, for the daughter she had failed, for decades of choices she couldn't undo. Dad stared at the floor, shoulders bowed with the weight of all the times he had chosen silence over courage. They didn't approach Linda. They didn't approach me. They just sat there, 2 people who had finally run out of ways to avoid the truth. As Linda was escorted to sign paperwork, she passed my table. She stopped for just a moment, not turning around. "I hope you're happy." The words were barely a whisper. Then she kept walking, and I said nothing. There was nothing left to say. 2 weeks later, Daniel called with an update on the restitution proceedings. Linda's assets had been frozen and liquidated. Her car was sold, with proceeds going to the restitution fund. Bank accounts were garnished. The first payment arrived in my account that afternoon. $8,500 from the sale of Linda's possessions. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like receiving payment for a wound that would never fully heal. "Full restitution will take years," Daniel explained, "maybe a decade. She'll be making monthly payments for a long time, wages garnished, tax refunds intercepted. She'll be paying for this for the rest of her working life. $92,000. That was the price my sister had put on our relationship. Less than that, actually. She hadn't even expected me to fight back. My parents appeared at my apartment door on a Saturday afternoon, 2 weeks after the verdict. They looked nervous, uncertain, standing on the threshold of a relationship they had damaged beyond easy repair. I let them in without a word. "We should have done this years ago." Mom's voice was smaller than I had ever heard it. "I created this, Emily. I taught Linda that rules didn't apply to her, and I taught you that your job was to absorb whatever she did. Neither of those things was love. It was damage." Dad spoke next, each word costing him effort. "I should have protected you, both of you. I let this happen because fighting was hard, and silence was easy. That was cowardice. You paid for it." I looked at these people who had raised me, these flawed and imperfect humans who had somehow produced both Linda and me. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I said finally. Not yet. Maybe not ever completely. But I can try to understand you. That's where we start. 3 months later, I stood before a small craftsman house in Dilworth, watching my realtor unlock the front door. It wasn't the house I had originally saved for. That dream had been stolen and shattered and rebuilt into something different. This house was smaller, older, purchased with new savings I had accumulated since the trial, not with recovered funds still trickling in from Linda's garnished wages. "Ready to see it?" the realtor asked. I took the keys from her hand and stepped inside. This was my house, my new beginning, built on my own strength, not on recovered losses. My phone buzzed as I stood in the empty living room. An unknown number. I almost ignored it. But something made me look. "Congratulations on the house. You deserve it. I mean that." The message was signed with a single letter. L. I stared at the screen for a long time. After everything, what did this mean? Was it genuine? Manipulation? A new angle? I didn't know. Maybe I would never know. But standing in my own home, I realized something that felt like freedom. My peace didn't depend on Linda's redemption. It never had. I closed the door on the old chapter and stepped into the next. 1 year later, I stood at my kitchen window watching snow fall gently over Raleigh. December had arrived with the kind of quiet beauty that North Carolina rarely sees. Soft white flakes drifting past the bay windows of my craftsman house, settling on the front porch I had dreamed about for so long. The coffee maker hummed behind me, filling the kitchen with warmth. Christmas decorations hung modestly around the room, nothing elaborate, just enough to make the space feel like home. My home, the one I had earned with my own strength after everything fell apart. I was 36 years old now, senior director of financial analysis at my firm. The promotion had come with a handwritten note from the CEO herself. "Your integrity under pressure did not go unnoticed. We're proud to have you on our team." I had framed that note, not because I needed validation, but because it reminded me that choosing the hard right over the easy wrong had consequences. Good ones. The move to Raleigh had been my choice. Charlotte held too many memories, too many places where I might run into echoes of the life I had dismantled. Here, 2 hours away, I could build something new, different, mine. Rachel had followed me within 6 months. "Someone has to make sure you actually take vacations," she said when she announced her transfer. We had dinner together every week now, hiked on weekends, and the friendship that had been forged in crisis had deepened into something unshakable. At my housewarming party, she had raised a glass and said, "You didn't just survive, Emmy. You became." I hadn't known how to respond. I still didn't, but I knew she was right. The volunteer work had started almost by accident. A colleague mentioned that the North Carolina Coalition Against Financial Abuse was looking for speakers, people with first-hand experience who could help others recognize the warning signs. I made one phone call that turned into a workshop, then another, then a regular commitment. Now I spent 2 Saturdays a month helping elderly victims understand how they had been exploited and how to protect themselves going forward. I knew the guilt they carried. I knew the manipulation tactics that had been used against them. And I knew, better than most, how hard it was to fight back against someone you loved. Last month, I had received a letter from Victoria Reyes. "Because of you," she wrote, "I finally reported what Linda did to me to the IRS. She owed back taxes on money she claimed she never received. They're investigating now. You started a chain reaction. Thank you for being brave when I couldn't be." I had read that letter 3 times. Then I had put it in a folder with Marcus's thank you note and Jason's email expressing gratitude for helping him see the truth. A chain reaction. I had never thought of it that way. But maybe that was the point. One person standing up gave others permission to do the same. My parents and I had found something new over the past year. Not forgiveness, not exactly, but understanding. We had monthly video calls now, scheduled and boundaried and real. They had visited Raleigh in October, staying at a hotel because that was my boundary and they respected it. Mom had joined a support group for parents of adults with personality disorders. "I'm learning how I enabled her," she told me during one of our calls. "It's painful, but necessary." Dad had started therapy for the first time at 68 years old. "I'm learning to say what I feel instead of staying quiet," he said. I could see them trying, that mattered. When Mom asked if I would come home for Christmas, her voice held none of the old demands, none of the guilt-laden expectations. "Only if you want to," she said. "We understand if you need more time." I had considered for a long time before answering. Then I said yes. "But I'm bringing Rachel, and we're staying at a hotel." Her response had surprised me. "Whatever you need. We're just glad you're coming. Small steps, but steps." Lily remained the bright spot in everything. Marcus had full custody now, awarded after Linda's conviction made clear that she couldn't provide a stable home. I still talked to my niece every month through video calls. She was 8 years old now, growing fast, curious about everything, resilient in ways that gave me hope. "Auntie Emmy, when can I visit your new house?" "Soon, sweetheart. Very soon." Last summer, Lily had spent a week with me in Raleigh. We had baked cookies together, visited the Science Museum, read books every night before bed. One evening, unprompted, she looked up at me with her mother's eyes and said, "Auntie Emmy, I'm glad you're not mad at me." My heart had broken and healed in the same moment. "I was never mad at you," I told her. "Not for 1 second. Not ever." Whatever happened with Linda, Lily would know she was loved. That child would not repeat this cycle. I would make sure of it. Linda's life had become something unrecognizable from the golden existence she had always imagined for herself. She worked at a grocery store now, minimum wage, stocking shelves and running a cash register. Her apartment was a studio in subsidized housing. $400 was garnished from every paycheck toward restitution, and she still owed over $75,000. The community service was complete, but the mandatory counseling continued. A therapist had finally given a name to the patterns the family had never acknowledged. A week before Christmas, a card arrived in my mailbox. Plain envelope, regular stamp, Linda's return address. Inside was a simple holiday card with a handwritten note. "Emily, I don't expect you to respond. I know I don't deserve it. Therapy is helping me see things I couldn't before, or wouldn't. I told myself stories about you my whole life. None of them were true. You weren't the jealous one. You weren't the cold one. You weren't the enemy. I was just too afraid to see myself clearly. I'm sorry, not because I want anything from you, just because it's true. I hope you're happy. I mean that now. I really do." It was signed simply, Linda. I read it 3 times. I didn't call Rachel to analyze it. I didn't try to decode hidden meanings or anticipate new manipulations. I just sat with it. Maybe it was genuine. Maybe Linda had finally begun the long work of understanding what she had done. Maybe not. Time would tell. But sitting there in my own kitchen, in my own home, in my own life, I realized something that felt like freedom. My peace didn't depend on Linda's redemption. It never had. Looking back now, I understand what happened to us. I had loved my sister so completely that I forgot to require her to love me back. I had given without boundaries, sacrificed without limits, and in doing so, I had raised someone who believed she was entitled to take. The family had enabled it. I had enabled it. Until I stopped. The greatest lesson I learned was this: love without respect is worthless. Family without integrity is just genetics. And sometimes the most painful choice is also the right one. I didn't destroy my sister's life. She did that herself. I just refused to let her destroy mine. If you're listening to this, maybe you recognize something in my story. Maybe there's someone in your life who takes and takes and takes, who makes you feel guilty for having boundaries, who calls your self-protection selfishness, who turns every conversation into your fault. You don't owe them your peace. You don't owe anyone unconditional sacrifice. Protecting yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. And sometimes survival is the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for everyone who truly cares about you. What would you do if someone you loved betrayed you this way? Would you have the strength to choose justice over guilt? Would you have the courage to choose yourself? Thank you for staying with me through this story. It wasn't easy to live. It wasn't easy to tell. But if one person hears this and recognizes their own situation, if one person finds the courage to set a boundary, to protect themselves, to say no more, then every painful moment was worth it. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment telling me your story, or just let me know what city you're watching from. It helps me see how far these stories travel, and if this resonated with you, hit that subscribe button. There are more stories to tell, more lessons to share, more journeys to take together. Until next time, remember this: you are worthy of respect. You are deserving of boundaries, and no one, not even family, has the right to steal your peace. This is Emily, and this was my story. This story is fictionalized for dramatic effect.